Welcome to the Roll Off a Tangent podcast, starring Nikki, XJ, and myself, Zendexor, Robert Gibson, whatever you want to call me. We talk about something literary every time. We alternate between published works by famous authors of the past and unpublished works by obscure writers of the present, namely ourselves. And this time we're talking about XJ's chapter 1 of his far future epic set on a far future Mars and other worlds of the solar system. The Longtail saga. The Longtail is a creature who doesn't speak and who is a native of this far future Mars, which is referred to as the Red Desert. I would just like to say that I've read a previous version of this story and I was rather puzzled, whereas this current version seems to have been revised and is much clearer. Hello, you still there?
Yeah, we hear you. We're just saying nothing because you're spitting facts, sir.
And if I may just utter a brief spoiler, which doesn't really spoil anything. The Red Desert is Mars, the Cloud Ocean is Jupiter, the Steaming Jungle is Venus. You get the idea. These places are referred to in such a way that it doesn't spoil the tone by a lot of anachronisms, whereas if you call them Mars, Venus, Jupiter, you'd think, well, that doesn't really fit with how far future this is supposed to be. So that's a good point, but at the same time, XJ manages to leave the reader in no doubt as to where these actual places are. I would like to just make the point that to me, the plot is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that the setting is extremely colourful and vivid, and it has the fascination of a Clark Ashton Smith setting or a Jack Vance setting. And basically, I think XJ is sitting on a gold mine here. If he can develop this far future solar system, it's not something anyone else I know of has actually ever done. The nearest thing I can think of is Raymond Galloon's novella Seeds of the Dusk, which does deal with a far future Mars, and it deals with it very well. That's only a novella, though, and XJ's work is novel length at least, if not several novels. So that's my introduction.
Thanks, Rob. Could you tell us, how you made us? When you made me recap my short story, it was like a fucking page. So it was much for me to recap. But could you recap for us what happens in the first chapter, actually?
Yeah. This is so actually. So I wrote this like I think 3 years ago now.
Wow.
And it's been an ongoing. I've completed the novel and I'm just like waiting to publish it right now. Just going through the hoops to publish it, but it's very interesting to reread it after 3 years, and I realized like my style has changed quite a bit, and I think like it would be interesting to read from chapter 1 all the way to the end in one sitting, just to see how the style has evolved over time. But yeah, going back to your question, this is basically a setup. It's a setup for the tone for the rest of the story. It's an introduction to the titular character, the Longtail himself. And the really important, as Rob has said, the plot for me is not as important as the atmosphere that it's setting out to do. Like the first chapter has a very thin plot, if I have to say that. It's basically, it's like in TV terms we'd just call it like a MacGuffin. I have a MacGuffin, and the guy and Longtail is going to get the MacGuffin, and once the MacGuffin is gotten, he leaves. So plot wise, there isn't that much. All of that is developed much later, and the main part of chapter 1 is to just set the tone, set the scene for where, like, the universe that the Longtail is in. He goes from this place, this mysterious place, takes a sky bridge, which is a bit like which the sky bridge, the inspiration behind the sky bridge is basically the Bifrost. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. The Bifrost bridge from Nordic mythology, which connects is a Asgard with Midgard, and so the sky bridge is basically a traveling device that allows interplanetary travel in a short amount of time. So that
transmission system.
Yeah. So we don't have to spend years and months following the Longtail as he hops from planet to planet. And so,
all right, nerd question: Is this like teleportation, where his molecules get like completely and utterly like distributed into the thin air, and then like a new Longtail is formed on the other? Unless this is like a huge plot point at some point that there's like 50 Longtails who have all like gone into the sky bridges.
No.
Or is it like a door where you just like walk in and then you walk out from the other side? Which one?
It's like a space elevator.
Okay, so there is no like molecule manipulation stuff kind of going on.
There is sort of, and that the actual mechanism behind the sky bridge. I'm not gonna say science because it's fantasy. It's really fantasy. Is hidden for the moment, and it might get reviewed later on. It might be. Yeah, but anyway, so the Longtail goes from this mysterious place to one of the moons of Jupiter, and he's there to find a MacGuffin that I call the crystal flower, which is something that is mentioned in his father's journal, who is a figure that he had been searching for quite a while. He disappeared in his early childhood, and he's been looking for the guy ever since he grew up. Yep. So after he got the MacGuffin, the crystal flower, he takes a sky bridge back to Mars, and that's chapter 1 in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I gotta say, so when I started reading this, first of all, I'm sure that the link to the first chapter is in the description of the YouTube thing, and if it's not, contact me, I'll send you the link. But there's this beautiful sort of like picture of Longtail walking into one of these sky bridges, is what I presume he's walking into, unless it's like something else. But that's what I say. And when I started reading it, and so parts 1 and parts 4 felt like Indiana Jones movies to me. Like I saw it very clearly in my head. I like the whole situations where he's kind of constantly being introduced to new threats, and there's like this weird stuff, and toxins come out of these plants, and he has to sort of like collect himself quickly. All that was missing is him like grabbing the hat and just like putting it on before he enters the sky bridge. I thought the action there was pretty well done. I think the story didn't get slowed down either by the fact that there was sort of these like constant revelations going on about the world and also the personal desires of the characters. So to me, it felt quite natural that this person, who doesn't say a single word in this entire chapter, which is a feat in and on itself, writers have tendency to fill out dead air, quote unquote, with some sort of snippy dialogue or whatever. It happens a lot. So it's very refreshing seeing like an entire first chapter basically without any dialogue. There's a lot of internal monologue going on with this person, but we need to know them, right? We need to understand them, who they are and what they're doing. And I really like the reveal in the first chapter that Longtail might not really care as much about finding his father, just as much as he's there to find the artifact. And again, that's where I got this like treasure hunting kind of like a vibe. The mention of the old ones, the constant like sort of thing that goes through. At first, you start sort of trying to guess who these people are, who are the old ones. My guess is like they're humans or something. That's the old ones, or it could be literally the Cthulhu. So I mean, but I shouldn't say that name because then Rob's camera will stop working, and then we're just gonna wait for 10 minutes, which is not ideal. So I will not mention the works of Mr. Lovecraft for a bit. I really enjoyed it. I think if I saw this in a bookstore, I would definitely have a look at what's going on in the other pages, and if it was my month to receive my salary, I would probably buy it to see what is going on. If not, I'd probably like hide in the toilet and read a couple of chapters. But
you mean pick the book off the shelf and then go to the toilet and then just
that's right, and just sit there like, all right, okay, cool. Very specific scenario. I'm not sure why. Anyways, so the atmosphere was pretty good. I kept dipping in and out of realization that this is more sci-fi than fantasy, because a lot of the traps and a lot of what's going on feels like fantasy tropes, or at least tropes closer to that sort of like time period. But then all the mix of the other elements from sci-fi being kind of slowly gelled into that situation made it much more interesting. This is a weird analogy, so bear with me. This is a drink that only exists in Germany, and it's called Spezi or Mezzomix. And this drink is a mixture between Fanta and Coca-Cola. And when you hear that, you think, wow, that's probably like disgusting. Because if you lived in any other country, Fanta is Fanta and Coca-Cola is Coca-Cola, right? And then you try Spezi, and let me tell you, they should sell it in every country in the world. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic thing. So thank you for sponsoring us. No, I'm joking. But that is something that everyone should experience. Just like the really famous example of Warhammer 30,000, which is a mixture of sci-fi and fantasy and this interesting blend. This felt the same to me, and it feels interesting. There's something new to say now that we have both of these flavors together. So yeah, overall, I think a very enjoyable first chapter.
I would call it science fiction, definitely. I wouldn't think there was any magic in it.
No, for sure, you're right.
Yeah, I'd like to say my favorite sentence in XJ's first chapter is the following: if a god wanted to be left alone, it would be in such a place that he would brood. I think that's a really, really fantastic sentence. Fantastic, not as in fantasy, but really good.
He almost proved my point now, Jack.
Yeah.
That is a beautiful thing. I agree with you. I don't think there was any magic going on. It's more like things are a bit surreal. And I think that's what gives the fantasy vibe there. Definitely, I'm not expecting any witches, but if there are witches, that'd be pretty cool, and they should be like on wheels or something.
Yeah, I would say this. The good news is that XJ is sitting on a gold mine with this theme that he's managed to corner really all by himself. I don't think he's got any competition in this far future solar system business, except for the one Raymond Galloon story I mentioned, and Galloon is dead now, so he won't have any competition. There is a minor piece of bad news which needn't really cause a lot of worry because it can be easily solved. But I want to give you an analogy. Supposing you had a new girlfriend and you were going to take her out to a meal, and everything was going right. You were really handsome and you had lots of money and you were bound to impress this girl.
Why are we suddenly in the fantasy realm again? I thought this was
for one thing, and that is, one thing might spoil the evening, and that is that you happen to have fried eggs smeared all over your chin. So that spoiled the look, right? Now, in XJ's case, I think the fried egg on the chin is, if I may give you an example, he wondered why the old ones and others were here. Now, that means that's like if he walked into a room and he saw somebody he didn't expect to see, and he wondered why this chap was here. It's not he wondered why they were here. It's he wondered why the old ones and others had been here.
Right.
Or now, you could say, or used to be here.
Or used to be here, yes. And similarly, the old ones did not put that sky bridge there. Now, that's like saying the old ones were not in the habit of putting that sky bridge there. What it means is the old ones had not put that sky bridge there. All right. The rocks looked like they have lain, blah, blah, blah. It should be the rocks look like they had lain. There's so on. There's loads of examples. I've taken, in the end, I stopped taking notes. And it's very easy to solve that problem. You can do it in two ways. You can either take the trouble to master the topic of English verb tenses, or you can hire me at $100 a month to revise the text.
Yeah.
So the problem doesn't have to exist at all. And if you get rid of that
sounds
problem,
like a ransom note.
if you get rid of this problem, you've got yourself, as I say, a gold mine, because nobody else is writing stuff like this that I know of.
Oh, I love your business pitch, Rob.
Yes. But I'm serious. It is an unnecessary. What am I trying to say? Not blot. That sounds too serious. But an unnecessary stain on the style. It just pulls me up short, and occasionally it actually confuses me because I think now, are the old ones in the past at all, or they must be, otherwise they wouldn't be the old ones. But that instant of confusion tarnishes the reader's experience. We want the reader to be mystified, perhaps, but not actually confused as to what the author is trying to say.
Good point. Yes, proofreading is something that I think every author should invest in just before he publishes his book, for sure.
Yeah, well, you probably, unless you're self-publishing, you may not it may jeopardize your chances.
Yeah. I mean, what I meant to say is before setting the book up for the public, I think every author should invest in proofreading.
Yeah, I know I should. I mean, I get my wife to proofread my stuff.
Does she also do it £100 a month, or like?
Well, no, but she always finds mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's really important. That's like it's a matter of craftsmanship, I think, and it's well worth the price to just refine it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know. You see, I don't know what your linguistic background is. It may be that you see, I haven't found any other kinds of mistake. It's just the verb tenses.
Really interesting.
So there's nothing wrong with. I can't remember anything wrong with your spelling or punctuation. If there is, it's quite rare. But it's the verb tense, and I don't know what your linguistic background is. Is it Chinese? Is that your mother tongue? Or...
Well, I grew up speaking both, so most of my education is in English, but I also have a fair bit. It's like half and half, and being bilingual is good in some sense, but it also has drawbacks, which is that I'm not perfect in either. Yeah.
Right. That must be really something to be able to have access to Chinese literature as well as English literature.
It's true that I have read things that I often wish my English-speaking friends in the Western world have read as well. That's very true.
There's something about literary work that when you read it in its original language that gets lost in translations. Unless you translate into Russian, then it enhances the work because Russian is the best language. But besides that example, no, I'm kidding. There is something that I always wanted to do, which is read the ancient Greek sort of
me too
stuff, like the Odyssey or something in its original view. But it's probably when I will be very old, so like in 10 years or something. I'm full of jokes today. But yeah, wouldn't it be? Could you imagine what an experience to read it in its original language?
I don't know about that. I have problems getting through like really. So I tried reading some texts from the Enlightenment era, and that was really difficult slog to get through because the way the sentences are constructed is just completely different from our time, and it is, even though it's in English, it was a hard read. I cannot imagine what it'd be like to try to master Greek or Latin enough to reach back several hundred years and understand them. And in fact, so I tried to read my grandfather's copy of Journey to the West in the original classical Chinese, and I couldn't get past 30 pages. Sorry about that.
Why not?
Because the style of writing is so old that it's a completely different language, and trying to make sense of each sentence is a struggle. It's work. It's not easy at all.
I would have thought Chinese would be immune from that kind of difficulty because it's based on pictograms, isn't it? So the pictograms would, a sentence is a sentence, whether it's written 1,000 years ago or today.
Well, the way the sentences are put together is very different. Like classical Chinese, so Mandarin itself is already very condensed, let's say, because the meanings are all packed. Like one sentence is packed with meaning, and the meaning is usually unspooled through context. And then reading classical Chinese is even more packed. Classical Chinese is even more packed, and plus it has a lot of allusions to theology, which is the Buddhism and the Taoism that is kind of mixed in a very Chinese way, and unless
you know the background,
it's very difficult to unspool that context and to take out that meaning. And so reading classical Chinese is very, very tough for me. Plus, Mandarin is like chock full of idioms, which classical Chinese love to sprinkle in, and each idiom is a story in and of itself. So it's like reading through a computer script with calls to functions that you have to go dig into the library to find out what the function means and stuff like that. Is quite tough.
So you'd have to spend most of your life trying to sort it all out in order to enjoy it properly, I suppose.
Yeah. No doubt at the time it was written, it was a smooth read, can I say, for the people involved back in the day. But now it's like, I couldn't get past page 30 of Journey to the West.
Well, it sounds like you did well to get to page 30.
I'm proud. I got to page 30. Nick is shaking his head.
Dostoevsky is rolling in his grave right now. I mean, there is something to say about the older literature and the way it was written, because if you look at stuff that was written in even like 60 years ago in the Russian language, it was very different to how things are written now. Actually, there's a lot of sort of Englishified language within current modern Russian writing, which I find quite abhorrent. Not because English is a bad language, but because Russian has so many more options. Why would you go to a language that has fewer? Doesn't make any sense to me. But regardless,
except that Russian doesn't have a word for the, which is
we don't need it. It's a useless word. Why would you? It's so like, all right, so it's either the car or car. Like, who cares if there's a the there?
The car is the car we've been talking about, whereas a car is just any old car.
That's like, what is it called? To me, at least as someone with the headspace who was brought up in the language of the Russian Federation. I don't know why I went so like formal about it, but
you just said the Russian Federation.
Well, because I'm speaking an inferior language, so no, but really, I'm joking. There is something to be said about like signifying that this is the exact thing, like you said, but the Russian language does not sort of like require a point of view of which thing you're specifically talking about, because it's the way you specify it is by giving it a lot of descriptives. And that's where Russian truly shines, and also why it's so hard to learn for some people, because it has like 50 words for different ways of saying one thing, but with very slight variations. And because of that, we don't need because you can be very precise and specific about this red can, right? Yeah. To be a bit more serious about it. But obviously, English has a lot of benefits too, and in my opinion, there's something to be said about a language that can cross borders and be within most households today. No other language can claim that but English. I think we can all agree with that. There's something very ubiquitous and universal about it, and for that I tip my hat to it.
It's just that it borrows from everything. English does. I mean, you just said ubiquitous. That's a borrowing from Latin. So yeah.
Well, isn't everyone borrowing from Latin? Isn't that like an okay thing that like every language is like we're just gonna borrow from Latin?
Well, obviously not Chinese.
Right, but I said language.
You. You're on a roll today, Nikki. What is wrong with you? No, it's funny.
I think it's the hat. I'm bullying everyone on the podcast. It's terrible. There is... Okay, here's something. So I know that there's Mandarin and there's Cantonese. The original sort of like Chinese language, it's closer to Cantonese than it is to Mandarin, right? Or the super like original one. Which one is it closer to?
I am not aware that it's closer to Cantonese or anything like that. So the story and everything in ancient Chinese history is a story. Is that back in the day, China was a fragmented piece of land with several different regions fighting each other for it's a lot like Europe back 300-400 years ago. Each state was warring with the other, and just like, and the wars were unlike those wars were quite brutal. And
you're talking about the warring states period before the Qin.
Exactly.
Dynasty.
Yeah. And so this Qin guy that Rob just brought up decided to unify the country, and then he went on a warpath. He unified the country, and one of the things he did was to institute a common language, which is Mandarin. Which one is closest to? I don't remember my history to that extent. What I do remember was that what I do remember, like vaguely from the stories I read, was that period of implementation was quite brutal as well. Yeah.
Yeah, didn't he order most of the books to be burned for at one stage? Or he's
he did. According to legend, anyway.
Yeah.
Well, we will never know, unless there's time travel. Then that would be pretty cool. Then we would know for sure.
That would be the biggest disaster. That would be the most disastrous invention ever made. Time travel.
You think? Yeah, people would just litter everywhere. All I think is like peanut plastic bags in ancient Roman times, like just like spinning around.
Yeah, but why? But why stop there? You could have a picnic in the Jurassic era, and then.
Oh man! Can you imagine if the butterfly effect theory is truthful? Like what? Like 20 times someone would go back, and we already have like frog faces and huge mandibles behind our backs or something.
Yeah, it's not very good for one's security, is it? Really?
No.
I mean, you'd only exist sort of a nanosecond, and then somebody would mess up your timeline, and you'd wink out of existence, and just
yeah.
Would the only safe quote unquote time travel would be then go to alternative universes where you don't care for the consequences? But how immoral is that then, right? Like if you go in there.
Well, I mean, what's to stop other alternate timelines from crossing over? And
you create the Lawrence Geiger field, which protects your universe. Nobody can go inside. Obviously, XJ.
Yeah. In Barrington Bailey's The Fall of Chronopolis, there's the achronal archives are protected by enormous time buffers from reality change. So if you want to know history that's not been mucked about, you have to go to the achronal archives. But everything else is, you know, up for grabs.
It sounds like a mess.
Hmm.
Do
Yes.
you think like time travel would be the most disastrous thing, or teleportation?
But teleportation is just really what we've got now, only worse. You know, sort of fast travel, jets and fast cars and everything.
But I mean, okay,
Would
do
be
you not
worse.
subscribe to the idea that you're not the same person when
Oh well,
you?
there is that. Yes,
That's
yes,
what
there
I'm
is.
talking about, right?
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah. Well, like we talked about this before, I think, didn't we? It's like going to sleep and waking up again. You can't be sure you're the same person. So it's not a radically new problem in that respect.
For sure. It's more like I think we even said this for our idea for the short story, right? Where the person would start getting like information sent to their brain directly because, you know, why not mess a bit with his or hers genetic code while they go through this thing anyways. You
Yeah.
have to like reshape them on the other side, but they wouldn't know that now they extremely like Coca-Cola instead of just liking it. Speaking of which, I'm kidding.
Right.
Coca-Cola
Product placement?
break. It's product placement. That's right. Another sponsorship I've secured. The time traveling thing seems like a disaster on a massive scale, whereas the teleportation situation sounds like a personal problem for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose if you think you can't teleport the soul, you just teleport the body. So the soul would just rush off and catch up with the reconstituted body at the other end, and there'd be no problem really.
But how fast can the soul travel then? Right? Like, so I was saying that you could, like, do you have to like stand 10 seconds more because you teleported from London to New York, or like, or is it instantaneous? Like,
yeah. Well, I think
any
perhaps the
questions?
soul is not limited by distance. It just
Right.
depends on a pattern.
So there are no physics to describe it, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I would guess so. Yeah. Some writers just ignore the problem. Like Clifford Simak in his Hugo Award-winning Way Station has matter transmission of that kind standard throughout the galaxy, and people just appear in the they just get copied and sent off, and then their old body just gets flushed down the drain. It's no use anymore, and they're reconstituted somewhere else. And this is just, as I say, standard. Nobody worries about it.
But I think when you live in a society for long enough where the invention now becomes old news, I think people would eventually stop thinking of it this way. I mean, you see it every day, right? Something that may seem bizarre or new in a few weeks just gets assimilated into the situation. No one bats an eye on it anymore. Whereas, like, 20 years ago, people would be like, huh, really? Like, I mean...
Well, we all get used to things. Yeah.
It's true. I mean, so... back to the story.
What story?
Longtail. Longtail is constantly like, he seems to be quite purposeful, right? Like he wants to find this flower, and he wants to find his father. And the idea that there's all this stuff sort of like happening to him along the way is very classical adventure type of chronicles, to the point. And I really like the moment where he's basically like sitting, like, oh well, I got this crystal, like that was cool. Like at least I got something from this. It really gave me the Conan vibes, where like the Tower of the Elephant is like collapsed, and he's like, well, there's a gold coin here. All right, at least I got a gold coin. This is pretty good. I think there's something there's something about an adventuring hero that you always want them to keep keep on the grind, keep trying to get more stuff, and the only way you do that is at the end they don't succeed as much as you want them to, right? And there is I think at least there is this really harrowing line, because if your hero never wins, and it feels like he never wins, he kind of becomes a sucker, doesn't he? Right? And he might lose credibility with the reader, and that might be an issue. But if he wins all the time, why is he doing this again? If he has all the money that he could ever want by now, because he's got the heart of the elephant and the, you know, like the black sword of the pirates and whatever. Like, you know, imagine if Conan won all the time. It would just be as ugly as if he would always lose. But
Conan does win, except that after winning, he blows it all on a riotous binge and loses all that he gained from the last adventure, so he has to start over.
Right. No, you're right, but that's what I'm saying. There's a balance, but there's a lot of stories where Conan ends with nothing too. Right, like the Tower of the Elephant that we covered is what I'm just more saying, like you know, the moment of in the Longtail story and the first chapter got me thinking about that, and I think it's something that good to think about when you're writing a protagonist, because you don't want them to be too successful, but you also don't want them to be someone who is like completely and utterly worthless. Right, it's a hard balance. If you at least, especially if you're writing a novella about them, a novel, or like many short stories with the same character.
Yeah. I mean, imagine how hard it would be to write a novel about Superman. Just about impossible.
Yeah, it's hard to come up with a challenge for Superman.
Well, because then it can't be about something that he can punch, right? That can't be that. If you want to really be cerebral about it, I think, like, all right, you know what, they messed it up anyways, because I think there is like a comic where he cures cancer, because he just like lasers it out of the person.
Good.
But you'd have to give him a threat that you just can't punch, or like punching it would only make it worse. I think that's the only way that you could make this character interesting in a threat situation. But I don't think Superman is a character about that. I think he's more of a paragon of good. Like he's an archetype of, you don't have to have something tragic happen to you. Okay, look, Spider-Man, uncle dies, maybe I should be a good person. Batman, my parents get killed. Crime's bad, guys. Green Lantern, I'm a huge douche and I fly around in this big jet. Oh, I cause a fatal crash where this alien dies, and now he's giving me this mission. Maybe I shouldn't be this bad person. Maybe I should do something good, right? You could look at 90%, 80%. Oh, Tony Stark's Iron Man. I sell weapons to terrorists. Oh, they shoot me with those weapons. Maybe I shouldn't sell them anymore to these people because they're bad. Right. Superman. I was born in Kansas. Doing good sounds like a good idea. I should do good. I think that's so perfect. Like, that is the lesson you want to give to children. Not that something horrible has to happen to you so that you finally become a good person. Yes. You could just be born a good man and do good things.
Yeah. I think those comics probably do quite a lot of good to youngsters who read them.
But you're right, they're not, you know, if you take a character like Superman way too seriously, there's nothing.
Well, I mean, those comic books are probably like the Aesop's fables of our time. You know, it's like very small morality lessons condensed into a short story kind of thing.
Right, but you're talking about the golden age stuff. Like, if you pick up a comic book right now, there's gore and blood and killings, and the Joker is like You know, like he's cut off his own face and now he's put it on other people, and then you
Well,
know, is this now a fairy tale? No, this is like entertainment for adults. It's not. It's not those
well,
fairy
you
tales.
know, I always prefer the old stuff anyway. So the new, I'm good with not reading any of the new stuff.
New stuff. No, I mean it's now you see it with a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff that used to be very orientated towards children is more and more aged up for at least all ages, if not strictly for adults. It was unheard of when stuff like The Dark Knight Rises and The Watchmen came out. These were titanic books in the comic industry, which basically showcased that comics can be serious and can be dark and gritty and interesting and whatsoever. But now it's like everyone wants to be that comic now, and that's I guess it's good that they're trying to tell more complex stories and more interesting stories, but at the same time, wasn't this supposed to be for children?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Aye.
I think I've earned a lot of enemies on Reddit after saying that. So if I go missing, you guys know who did it.
Or call Superman, no worries.
It's called Superman would save me. That's true. Probably the only person. Is there a like a story that isn't one of our like grim tales or such that is told in England, Rob? Like a fairy tale that you've never heard anywhere else to be mentioned, but in the media of England, of your country.
I can't think of one. You mean?
So like Jack and the Beanstalk is told everywhere. So is the
Yeah.
Little Mermaid and stuff like that. Is there something that is like very like a myth maybe, or something like that is specifically maybe even for your area, like or something like that?
Yeah. Well, there's a writer called Alan Garner who is learned in the law of Cheshire, one of the counties in the northwest of England, and he's very successful author. 1960, so a while back, but he wrote around about then wrote The Weird Stone of Brisingamen, which is based on Cheshire legends, and that's a super book. And it's about the clash of good and evil, and it all happens in a radius of about 3 miles or so.
Oh.
And it's it's quite a book, yeah. But it's as though the whole fate of the world is depending on whether some children can get a certain object from point A to point B over a distance of about 3 miles, something like that anyway. And all sorts of things come up to try and stop them, giant troll women and so on. But it's all woven into everyday life. So it's not some other dimension or something like that. It's the ordinary countryside of Cheshire, but there are things in it which which sort of infiltrate, and you have to avoid them. And there are some ordinary people as well who get mixed up in this. It's not just children, so it's quite a heck of a book. But I guess that's a bit what you're thinking about.
Reason that I asked is because I think all places that have like a big cultural hub somewhere there, like a very country based one, have these stories, have these myths. So I mean, on the previous episode I talked about Koshchei the Deathless, right? The very, very, very prominent fictional character in Russian folklore who can't be killed unless you go through this huge hurdle, finally find his needle and like an egg that's stored in a rabbit that's stored in never mind, I explained it last time. That's crazy. But this universe that you've created, XJ, have you thought about like myths or something like that Longtail would have heard
That was
or
one.
seen.
That was one hell of a tangent to get back to the story. I'm like, huh? Are we back?
Well,
to...
we talked about myths and then I thought like, well, are there myths in this world? Like, is there
myths
something
in this
that...
world.
The old one.
The biggest one would be the old ones. Of course, the biggest mystery
Right.
is the old ones, the old gods. They are interchangeable in my story. And of course, like there is a space of at least 1 million years between the old ones and the Longtail. And so the mystery is what happened during that period and then what happened before, what came before. And and each I mean, I take a very one of the things. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, and I'm setting up myself for assassination as well.
Another Reddit squad has been sent out to find you.
I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but one thing I do like about Star Wars is how each planet has a very contained team within it. You have the Swarm planet, they go by, and then you have Hoth, which is the ice planet, and then you have, of course, the desert planet that Luke Skywalker started from. And so each of my planets have like a bit of a theme to it as well, and
A theme.
a theme,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
bits of little bits of hints of what happened before are all in the environment as I described them when the Longtail goes through them. Yeah. And so like those hints are there, but they don't paint the full picture, and I suppose that is about as close as mythology. And it's an interesting thing that you brought that up, because I never really thought about the religious aspect of it. So to me, that portion, that part of that world is still something that needs to be that would grow as I write more, I believe. Because right now, yes, there is a priesthood, but the priesthood is more of a tech priesthood. So it's not it doesn't have that flavor of religion where it's also got it also deals with things of a philosophical nature, like sin and redemption and modes of behavior, that sort of stuff. I just realized I did not answer your question at all.
Yeah, that's okay. Unless you want to try and answer it.
No, I mean, basically, I don't really construct a lot of myths, and part of the reason is I didn't construct a lot of myths in my story. Part of the reason is I wanted the old ones to be a mysterious and an enigma. Yes, basically because the concept is so look, if we're going through, if we grew up in a time, if let's just think about an alternate universe where as the civilization that we're born in, we grew up, and then there are like this enormous artifacts of a civilization that had gone on before, and their works are all around us. Like, they're there and they're indisputable. They work if we could figure out how to use them, but we have no idea who left them behind and any of that stuff. We have zero lore on that. It's that the presence of that thing, of that ancient civilization, is going to wipe out any other local source of myths, is what I think.
Yes. Yes.
It's just going to overshadow anything, and that's why whatever whatever local mythology that I would craft, I have to be. I just to give myself an out. I make it very thin, just so I don't draw too much attention to the old ones. Yeah. Does that answer the question better, Nikki?
I think so. And you know, it gets me to see within your mind, and how you're constructing stuff. Obviously, I believe that there is a lot of benefit in constructing like a mythology that almost like seeps through the words of the people that originate within the word. But there's also a lot to be said about you know, a semblance of silence in there. I think that could also be a powerful tool, you know, especially you saying that like the old ones being so important, so tangential to everything, so them kind of overshadowing everything else is also an interesting aspect of it. But yeah, I think I get it.
All right, we're coming up to the hour. Anything else you guys want to wrap up on?
Rob looks like he wants to say something.
Yeah,
I was just saying the distinction between science and mythology kind of breaks down in XJ's scenario, I think, which is all to the good. Part of the merit of it.
That's right. Part of its charm.
Well, so I guess that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for reading my story, specifically to both of you for taking the time out. Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome.
And thank you for the nice feedback, Rob. I will consider your business proposal.
You mean the ransom he put on you? Blasted you through the internet. Oh wow. That was you know, I thought I'm mean, but then
nah, it's good criticism.
No, somebody has to do it.
It's a tough job, but I enjoy it.
All right, man. I guess that wraps up today's episode. Thank you for listening, and like, subscribe, all that stuff. Find the links to my website in the comment section below, and see you all next time.
Bye bye.